This video is brought to you by Ground News. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire Upper Echelon community. Alright, today is a continuation of something that initially started in 2020. Actually, it started in 2017, but regardless, it first became public in 2020, and now, in 2024, it's come back seemingly one final time. To be clear, a lot of what I'm about to talk about today are simply allegations. These are opinions or accusations from people that are not borne out in a court of law. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again here, what is the internet if not a jury, on the grandest of scales, that presides over a court of public opinion, which is always perpetually in session? Like it or not, internet stardom is often dominated by the court of public opinion. Careers can rise or fall purely on the back of suspicion, and while DrDisrespect is not behind bars or indicted on any charges, his career has completely imploded in a way that could very well be deserving of study. For anyone who doesn't know the name DrDisrespect, which I find hard to believe if you are a regular watcher of YouTube or Twitch or engage in any online gaming communities whatsoever, he's a streamer. Originally rising to prominence in the early 2010s, his online persona, DrDisrespect, is just a character. His real name is Herschel Beam IV. From 2010, the moment he began his online journey, to 2020, DrDisrespect became an internet sensation. His prominence on Twitch led him to be awarded an Esports Streamer of the Year distinction in 2017, among other accolades thereafter. But 2017 in particular would coincidentally, or maybe not so much, become a year that would haunt the rest of his professional life. I won't spend too much time here on old news, but context is important for understanding why the reaction more recently is what it is. Shortly after his 2017 award, DrDisrespect took an extended leave of absence after publicly disclosing to his entire community that he had been unfaithful in his marriage. I have no idea why this was announced to the entire world. Speculation was rampant at the time that he was perhaps being forced to disclose this by someone off-screen during the broadcast or someone else involved. But regardless of why it happened, his career seemingly took a pretty big hit. However, what became very clear in the aftermath is that while internet trolls and detractors of his would certainly never let these events go entirely, his community of core fans were extremely dedicated. Upon returning, DrDisrespect had nearly 400,000 live viewers during that broadcast, marking one of the biggest Twitch streams ever at the time, and he would go on over the next couple of years to win yet another Streamer of the Year award, as well as receive major brand partnerships and millions of new followers. Sure, he still had his controversies, like when he filmed inside a bathroom at E3 2019, but it wasn't until 2020 that a mystery born 3 years earlier, 2017, would fully enter public consciousness. 2020 was the year that DrDisrespect was very suddenly suspended on Twitch. It was a shock. There was little to no information available at the time, but speculation again ran wild as to why the mega streamer had been suspended shortly into a massive contract that he had signed with Twitch directly, seemingly to help squash a business competitor of theirs called Mixer. Mixer, funded by Microsoft, was engaging in exclusivity contracts to try and break into the world of streaming at the time, which prompted Twitch to create a contract with DrDisrespect that they would now be attempting to nullify. Once again, people had no information, as one of the largest personalities on the entire platform was permanently removed, but none of it, stopped his career from thriving. Authenticity of information is one of the greatest assets that you can have in today's online world. It's a thing that pretty much everyone is always chasing, whether conscious or not, and it's a thing that cannot be achieved without understanding bias, and that's where today's video sponsor comes into play, called Ground News. You guys can obviously check them out at ground.news/echelon for 40% off their Vantage plan. As I've mentioned already before ever agreeing to work with them, I spent roughly 6 months reviewing and vetting the service, which went quite well, and now I use the service for one paramount reason, which is comparison. News goes out everywhere. It gets shown by syndicates, online blogs, activist reporters, you name it, but Ground News gathers all of it in one place with a clear system of marking bias, corporate ownership, and distribution of coverage. As an example of what they do, they've gathered 62 different articles so far about the DrDisrespect situation, where you can see that 11 lean left, 5 lean right, and 7 center. You can easily use that information to compare headlines or find discrepancies even, evaluating the full scope of news in general instead of being led to conclusions by a particular outlet. They also have a blind spot feed that highlights stories ignored by one side of the spectrum or the other, keeping you informed no matter your viewpoint, and Ground News does an excellent job avoiding intrinsic bias. They don't push one particular ethos or perspective, and they offer excellent tools for the evaluation of breaking news in a world where most of what you read is designed to have some sort of influence on you. If you click the link down below in the description or scan the QR code to sign up, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan. Again, link down below, ground.news/echelon for 40% off a Vantage plan today. Big thank you to Ground News for sponsoring the channel. Let's jump ahead a little bit here. 2021 through 2024 were some of DrDisrespect's best professional years after returning to the world of streaming on YouTube instead of Twitch and finding a bevy of new professional relationships. Just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, here's only a couple examples. In 2023, he became closely linked to the San Francisco 49ers NFL team, even sounding the horn to announce the start of a wildcard game, suiting up in their actual uniform, and having promotional videos released all over their social media channels. In 2022, he was awarded a dedicated quest and avatar of himself in NBA 2K23, a massively popular video game. In 2021, he signed a massive partnership with sports betting platform FanDuel, and also in 2023, he joined up with Turtle Beach, launching his own branded gaming hardware. Even further, he co-founded a video game development studio called Midnight Society in a span of time that was not sloping downward at all. It was rather taking off once again despite being permanently suspended from the largest streaming platform on the internet. Things looked very good for him despite multiple prior setbacks. Well, 2024 would be the year that it all came crashing down, because 2024 is the year that what happened in 2017 and was acted on in 2020 would hit the public eye, and the internet is a very cruel, unforgiving mistress. The saga begins with a post from an ex-Twitch employee that reads, quote, "He got banned because got caught sexting a minor in the then existing Twitch Whispers product. He was trying to meet up with her at TwitchCon. The powers that be could read in plain text. Case closed, gang." Further continuing, "No one made the wrong decision. Fuck him and his boys." End quote. While the statement itself is truly ambiguous, people were very quick to connect it all back to DrDisrespect, after which the doc himself made a statement that read, quote, "I get it. It's a hot topic, but this has been settled. No wrongdoing was acknowledged, and they paid out the whole contract." End quote. That statement, far from closing the case on what happened and why, merely exacerbated the problem tremendously, because fans began to wonder why such particular wording. No wrongdoing was acknowledged instead of something more definitive. Why not say, nothing actually happened? Even still, fans began digging as hard as they could, and it turned out this Cody person, former Twitch staff who had initially broken these new allegations, had a history of leveraging the initial ban for personal profit. Call them jokes, call them serious, I honestly don't know. But when you've publicly said, listen, if all 3 dates sell out, talking about a show that you're putting on yourself, I'll tell you why he got banned, it calls objectivity into question and makes people wonder, why are you actually doing this? Still, once a snowball gets rolling down a mountain, it doesn't usually stop on its own. The next domino to fall was Midnight Society, probably the biggest domino in the chain. The company DrDisrespect had co-founded himself, which released a public statement saying, quote, "On Friday evening, we became aware of an allegation against one of our co-founders, Guy Beam, aka DrDisrespect. We assumed his innocence and began speaking with parties involved. And in order to maintain our principles and standards as a studio and individuals, we needed to act. For this reason, we are terminating our relationship with Guy Beam immediately. While these facts are difficult to hear and even more difficult to accept, it is our duty to act with dignity on behalf of all individuals involved, especially the 55 developers and families we've employed along with our community of players." End quote. Yeah, that was the turning point for a lot of people watching on the sidelines. So far, it was merely allegations at arm's length or hearsay, a friend of a friend, or second and third level sources. But the studio that he co-founded, saying we assumed his innocence and began speaking with all parties involved, but then terminating him outright, things were getting much worse very quickly. One day later, June 25th to be precise, DrDisrespect released his own statement, probably marking the final collapse of his career. At 2:00 p.m. precisely, he released a lengthy description of what had happened, addressing his community, in which he stated, quote, "Were there Twitch whisper messages with an individual minor back in 2017? The answer is yes," end quote. But 1 minute later, according to the edit history, which is public on Twitter, he changed that same sentence to, "Were there Twitch whisper messages with an individual back in 2017? The answer is yes," deliberately removing the word minor from the sentence. That's interesting and probably good, right? But then, after a large chunk of the community obviously began to notice, because these edits are public on the website, 22 minutes after the edit was made, he reversed it, putting the word minor back in, demonstrating that there was almost certainly a legal team involved behind the scenes, and cementing the fact that while he may say the messages maybe leaned too much towards being inappropriate, but there was no intent, Twitch had obviously found something they didn't like, which was now backed up by his own development studio. At this point, the snowball was rolling full force. The San Francisco 49ers issued a statement that they would be cutting ties with him as a result of the situation. Turtle Beach announced that they would be going their separate way as well. Even NBA 2K would now remove his avatar and quest from the game owing to this controversy, and it wasn't even over yet. A streamer by the name Lena Love released detailed messages appearing to be from DrDisrespect in 2017, where he had engaged in sexual conversations with her under the promise of partnerships, ambiguously said there, only to block her immediately afterward. As of yet, these messages haven't been fully authenticated, but after downloading the files and reviewing the transitions frame by frame, I see no evidence that they were fabricated with editing software. That does not discount the use of inspect element or actually source modifications, but so far they don't appear to be fake in the sense of being photoshopped. However, for a couple of frames at the bottom of the page, the handle she tried to blur out is actually visible and says Blockbuster Doc, which doesn't appear to return anything in user searches on Snapchat, and someone who's more familiar with Snapchat as a platform, I don't personally use it, can perhaps look into when this account was made or deleted or anything really, because if that Snapchat account can be tied to him directly, or if it can be proven that it was recently opened just now, well, it could make the difference between another aspect of a horrible story being true or a fabrication aimed at kicking a man while he's down. That part remains to be seen. The whole thing, for better or worse, has rapidly evolved as time passes, with additional Twitch staff coming forward decrying how bad the situation was, but how much worse Twitch had handled the entire platform during that time frame, and the chain of events is certainly curious to say the very least. But at the end of the day, after 4 years of mystery and 7 years total, one of the world's largest streaming celebrities ever has fallen from grace, whether deserving or not, after kicking off a chain of events in 2017 that would haunt him for the better part of a decade. Some people will say deserved, others will say he's getting railroaded, but ultimately there's a lot of different parties to blame here, including Twitch as a platform, who is now under pressure to justify all of their actions. Something they supposedly knew about in 2017, actively in real time as it happened, was possibly, ignored until 2020, at which point it was acted on in a way where they still had to pay out the entire contract? That's confusing, very confusing, but it calls into question the decision-making and priorities of the platform, which has now been back in the spotlight as their employees add fuel to the fire that's been smoldering for the past 4 years. It's really not a good look. Regardless, DrDisrespect, one of the most famous personalities online after rapidly rising to fame and fortune, appears to have suddenly fallen back down again after details of his original suspension came out, causing him to be crucified in the court of public opinion for the second time. He certainly still has a core set of dedicated fans, there's no doubt about that. But somehow I find myself doubting his ability to come back bigger and better than ever for a third time after this many different but kind of similar and related types of setbacks. Right or wrong? That's not up to me. That decision perpetually lies in the hands of the internet, where innocence and guilt are an extension of public opinion. For DrDisrespect, that opinion clearly appears to have soured. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, of course, Ground News, which has an excellent breakdown of all the stories out there right now about DrDisrespect, a special VPN deal, locals and Patreon, monthly memberships to support the channel, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.